now the news in detail. President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi said that the progress witnessed in the armed forces key divisions, specialities and armament systems require a meticulous picking of a combatant who could carry out all his tasks. The president made these remarks as he inspected this morning the military academy, where he followed up the procedural checks conducted on the students who wish to join the military colleges and institutes. President el-Sisi said that the armed forces cadets are selected from all social categories and the priority remains for those who pass the needed medical, psychological, athletic and scientific exams. He hailed the students' readiness to sacrifice their souls in order to protect the nation and maintain its stability. And in his capacity as the current chief of the African Union, President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi hoped that the upcoming Africa-Russia summit would contribute to building a constructive strategic relationship between Moscow and the African nations based on expanded cooperation in all fields. In a note published via the Russian African Forum website, President el-Sisi noted that the summit scheduled for October the 24th at the Russian resort Sochi embodies the historic friendly ties binding Russia with African countries and expressed the keenness to enhance such ties in order to fulfill the aspirations of the African and Russian peoples. The summit, the first of its kind, gains a special importance as being held at a time of large international changes on all fronts.
Egypt opens up to the world. President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi meets with world leaders.
أعبر لكم عن خالص الشكر والتقدير على حفاوة الاستقبال وكرم الضيافة.
Reaffirming Egypt's vision, delivering our voice abroad.
لتطوير التعاون الثنائي الاقتصادي والعسكري إلى مستويات غير مسبوقة.
Discussing regional and international developments. Solid and strong relations on the path of partnership and development.
And Prime Minister Mustafa Madbouli received today at Cairo Airport His Excellency Sheikh Gaber al-Mubarak al-Hamad al-Subah, the Kuwaiti Prime Minister. The official cabinet spokesman, Councillor Nader Saad, said that the visit comes within the framework of boosting bilateral relationships. Both Prime Ministers are scheduled to discuss the latest developments on the regional and international arena, as well as signing a number of treaties for mutual cooperation. And convening in a public session today, the House of Representatives granted a final approval to some amended provisions of the penalty laws, notary and documentation fees, and procedural challenges before the Court of Cessation. The lawmakers meanwhile started debating amendments to the public sector authorities and company laws. The Parliament assigned the local administration and agriculture committees with drafting a report on the means of combating the threat of stray dogs in line with the animal care social standards. And tens of thousands of Lebanese took to the streets for a fourth day today to protest the political status and corruption as the government was rocked by the resignation of a coalition partner. And demonstrations began spontaneously on Thursday in response to a proposal tax on calls via WhatsApp and other messaging services. While the government quickly dropped the plans, the protests morphed into demands for a sweeping overhaul of Lebanon's political system, with grievances ranging from austerity measures to poor infrastructure. And the Turkish Foreign Minister Mevlut Cavusoglu said that today Turkey and Russia will discuss the removal of the Syrian Kurdish YPG militia from the northern Syrian towns of Manbij and Kobani during talks in Sochi next week. And Turkey paused its military offensive into northeastern Syria after President Tayyip Erdogan agreed on Thursday in talks with the U.S. Vice President Mike Pence to a 5-day ceasefire to allow the YPG to withdraw from a safe zone Ankara aims to establish near its border. Cavusoglu said that urgent talks between Erdogan and Russia's Vladimir Putin would be held next week. On his part, Erdogan said he would also discuss the Syrian army deployment in northern Syria, with Putin saying the two needed to find a solution to the matter. And the British government said Britain will leave the European Union on October the 31st, despite an unsigned letter that Prime Minister Boris Johnson was forced by his opponents to send to the bloc requesting a Brexit delay. And we have more details in the following report.
The European Union will play for time rather than rush to decide on British Prime Minister Boris Johnson's reluctant request to delay Brexit again. Diplomats made the announcement with the bloc said after a 15-minute meeting today. The British Parliament refused to vote on Johnson's new Brexit withdrawal deal yesterday, a move that forced him to seek a third postponement of Britain's departure from the bloc. It has so far been envisaged for October the 31st. At a rare today meeting of ambassadors of the 27 states that will make up the EU after Brexit, the diplomats decided to forward Johnson's deal to the European Parliament for its required approval. On his part, the chairman of the European Union leaders, Donald Tusk, said yesterday he had received the extension request and he would now be consulting with EU capitals on how to react. After the British Parliament refused to endorse Johnson's deal at the first time of asking yesterday, the Prime Minister sent a letter to the bloc requesting a delay as required by a law passed earlier by Parliament. Johnson, who has insisted that Britain will leave on October the 31st, come what may, added another note, however, in which he explained that he personally did not want the deeply coercive postponement.
And at least 9 people were killed today in firing along the de facto India-Pakistan border in Kashmir, adding to the spike in deaths in recent days as New Delhi eased a curfew in the disputed region. Tensions escalated between the nuclear-armed neighbors after India revoked Kashmir's autonomy on August the 5th and imposed movement and communications restrictions to quell unrest. Officials from the two countries accused each other of firing mortar rounds and small arms along the so-called line of control. Several homes were damaged in the attack and 3 civilians are being treated in a hospital. The shelling came after 5 people were killed in the Indian Kashmir on Wednesday, 2 days after New Delhi restored mobile phone and text services. Heavy local and Arab corporate purchases pushed Egypt's bourse higher at the close of today's trading session, with its capital settling at a 717.8 billion Egyptian pounds amid total transactions of 1.4 billion pounds. And the stock exchange turned green as investors were optimistic over the remarks made on the sidelines of the current IMF World Bank meetings in Washington by senior officials from global financial institutions on Egypt's economic progress. Benchmark EGX 30 index rose an 0.2% near the 14,240 point mark. Medium-capped EGX 70 index climbed an 0.4% and the broader EGX 100 index surged 0.5%. And the 14th round of the Initiative for Joint Statements International Conference kicked off today in Cairo, being one of the most global events in the energy field. And the Ministry of Petroleum and Mineral Resources said the initiative aims at sharing data and activate the role of the concerned bodies to guarantee the safety and sustainability of energy supplies through enhancing cooperation between the producing and consuming countries. The ministry noted that the initiative contributes to creating a state of harmony among different global policies and unifying the current stances, as well as boosting the future outlook of energy sources development. And China's top central banker said that potential escalation of trade tensions and policy uncertainty were the major risk factors facing the world economy, and market forces were keeping China's yuan at an appropriate level. And Yi Gang, the governor of the People's Bank of China, said in a statement to the International Monetary Fund Steering Committee that Beijing is deeply disappointed in the IMF's failure to realign its shareholding structure to recognize the rising influence of China and other fast-growing economies. His statement said that the depreciation in the yuan since the beginning of August has been driven by the market forces, including volatility prompted by escalating trade tensions.